My name's Tonna Marek. I work at the Nampa Police Department and I'm a patrol corporal. I've been there for a little over 20 years now. And when I started 20 years ago, it was the best job in the world and what everybody dreamed about, driving fast and being in a uniform and helping people. And in 2007, I'd been on the job for a little over 7 years. And my life completely changed. I worked night shift and I went into work just like every other night. I was a K-9 officer at the time, and I remember hearing on the radio a call of an attempt to locate, reference two subjects that were in a truck. We were told that somebody had bonded out of the Ada County Jail and was with a bondsman, and they had come up missing. We were later told that the subject that had bonded out of jail was found at a family member's house. He was covered in blood, and the bondsman was nowhere to be found. And we were asked to start looking for that subject and for the bondsman in hopes to either save his life or do a recovery. Throughout our shift, that's what we did. We searched for this truck, and I kind of set it out as my goal. I told myself, let's find this truck, let's find this subject, and kind of figure out what's going on. And at about 1 o'clock in the morning, I was out helping Canyon County Sheriff's Office in an area that he had possibly been found or been located. The subject ran from the sheriff's office and was running through an abandoned field. And I was the only officer at the time that was in that area searching the field, going back and forth with my patrol car, spotlighting the field, looking for this male subject that had ran from the sheriff's office. A short time later, myself and a Canyon County deputy located the male subject laying out in the field away from us in the dark. Spotlit him, and we told him that he needed to show us his hands and give up, and we were going to head his direction. He stood up and ran from us. At the time, like I said, I had a dog, and I thought a perfect opportunity, and I sent my K-9 his direction as I was running behind him. The male subject stops and turns around and starts shooting at my direction. At the time, I wasn't really aware of how many times he had shot at me. I remember diving on the ground and laying in the dirt thinking this is not where I wanted to be and that I just wanted to dig a hole. And my subconscious took over and I got up on my knees and returned fire. And then the next thing I realize is that the subject's laying down. I think that he's laying prone and ready to go to a gun battle. So I lay back down in the dirt and just wait to see if he's going to continue firing. At that time, some Canyon County deputies that had been behind him, chasing him, come through the field up over a dirt hill and advised that the suspect's down. We approached at that time and we realized that he'd been hit with gunfire, unknown at that time if it was mine or somebody else's. A few short hours later, during interviews, I was told that it was my round that had struck the suspect and that he was deceased. I knew at the time what I did was justified. I still know that to this day. The bondsman was later found murdered by this subject. He had been shooting at me. He could have taken my life. He could have taken other officers' lives in innocent public. As much training as you go through, as much as you think that you're prepared for it, I wasn't. I had no idea why my brain was not allowing me to process it. I kept telling myself that you're okay, you did what you needed to do. That taking a human life isn't natural, it's not normal. But the one thing that I had to learn is that the event was not normal, but the reactions and the things that I was feeling afterwards were completely normal. But at the time, I didn't realize that. At the time of my shooting, I was the first officer since the 80s that had taken a life in the line of duty, or that had to take a life at Nampa Police Department. So I wasn't working with anybody that could help me process. I didn't have anybody that I could talk to that would understand what I was thinking or feeling. I didn't know that sleepless nights were something normal. I didn't know that bad dreams were normal. And I thought I was going crazy, and I felt like I was weak. But I didn't want anybody to know that. I was worried that I was going to be judged for how I felt and for the things that I was thinking. So I put up a barrier, and I went to work within 2 weeks and tried to get back on the road and just be a police officer and do my job. The very first night that I went back to work, I was struggling. I was scared. I didn't want to be there, and that's not safe. I responded to a welfare check call of a female that hadn't shown up to work, and her family hadn't heard from her, and they were concerned because of comments that she had been making about being depressed. And I got to her house with other officers, and the blinds were closed. And I had to make my way safely up towards the living room window to peek in and see if I could see anything. And I saw her sitting there with a handgun to her chin, wanting to end her life. And at that moment, I knew that I wasn't ready. And I wasn't prepared to have to face what I had faced 2 weeks ago. And I took the strength to admit that I needed to go home and that I needed help. And after that night, and every day since then, it's been my goal to change the stigma of that it's not okay to be not okay. I want people to know that what they're thinking and what they're feeling is completely normal, and it's the event that you've gone through that's not normal. I went to a class one time, so I can't take credit for this, but the retired police officer talks about a stew pot, and that we all start our lives with this empty pot. And everything that you go through in your life that's negative, it doesn't have to be work related when you're an emergency responder. That can be a divorce of your parents and you throw some potatoes in that stew pot. It could be an argument with a spouse and you throw in a handful of spices. And all life long we go through things that are horrible or adversely affect us, and our pot fills. When you're an emergency responder, when you're in the military, when you're a nurse, unfortunately we see a lot more things than the general public does, so our pots tend to fill a lot faster. And I had to learn that I needed to grab a ladle and start emptying my pot so it didn't overflow and I'd get to a point where I couldn't back out. Because when a stew pot overflows, there's a mess everywhere and it's hard to clean up. And I had to find what was my ladle and what was I going to do to help empty that pot, because daily our pots continue to fill. And it seems just like when you start emptying your pot, another incident happens that tries to fill it. But I've learned to tell myself, I wake up every morning and I have the choice. Is it going to be a good day or is it going to be a bad day? Am I going to dwell on negative things in life? Am I going to dwell on bad calls I've gone on? Or am I going to put my shoes on and put a smile on my face and carry on? And that's what I choose to do. But sometimes there's those days where you just don't feel like you can get up and you can push anymore. And that's when it's time to ask for help. Is when it's time that I've realized for myself that I need to admit I'm not okay. I need to talk to somebody. I need to let my friends, my family, my coworkers know that I'm not okay. And that's the stigma that we have to change, is that in our jobs, everybody thinks that they have to be tough and stand behind the badge or, stand behind the mask. And we can't do that anymore. We have to realize that we need to process. We need to talk. We need to make sure that we're okay. Because if you're not okay yourself, then nobody around you can be okay. You can't be a good parent, can't be a good spouse, can't be a good coworker, and you have to be strong for everybody, especially yourself. And that's been the hardest lesson for me to learn, is that before I take care of everybody else, I have to take care of myself. And self-care is huge. Whether you take up exercising, you go to a counselor, you have to do something so that you're okay and strong enough to be able to be around other people and lift them up as well. Recently, in a off-duty situation, we were camping with family and friends last summer, and we were having fun. We're swimming. We're thinking that everything's great. We had an incident occur, and it's the first time that I had an off-duty incident that sent me spiraling, like some of my work incidents can do. And it was one of those situations that made my pot boil over. We were at a lake, and all of our families were out hanging out by the water, and we were barbecuing. And we witnessed somebody drown. We were the first ones in the water to try and save him, and we couldn't get there quick enough. And for the last year, I've not been able to process or understand why I was so upset with that incident, why I couldn't sleep at times. And I finally had to realize that it was just an incident that made my pot boil over, and I needed to reach out and get the help that I needed. And I went to counseling, and I'm proud to say that I had asked for that help, and I went to the counselor, helped me get through those things, because there's certain things that I can't process by myself. And there's things that you can't process by yourself. You have to admit that you need help. You have to be strong enough to say that you're not okay. And you have to realize that it's okay to not be okay. And until you reach out for the help that you know deep down you need, you can't take that step forward. There's so many resources out there. You just have to start looking. You just have to ask. One thing that I like to tell people when I talk about my incident, or I'm listening to them talk about theirs, is that what you went through, whether it's work related, whether it's home life, whether it's a childhood problem, what you went through is not normal. It's not normal. But everything that you're feeling and thinking, it's normal. You're having normal reactions to a not normal situation. Don't think that you're going crazy. Don't think that there's no help or no hope for you, because what you're feeling and what you're thinking and what you're going through, so many other people are as well. But you just don't know it because you haven't talked to anybody. And I'll admit, I'm expressing and talking about the way that I feel after my situations or the events that I went through. But I can guarantee you that your situation and your event is just as traumatic, because it's yours. It's nobody else's. You have ownership of it, and you get to decide how it's handled. And you just have to realize that you're going to be okay, but you have to be strong enough to take that first step forward and ask for that help, or go try to retrieve that help.